What does Bloodborne mean to me? That's a good question. Without thinking about what I'm answering, Bloodborne is what video gaming is all about. That's the magic of games right there. Hello, my name is Jim Caddick, also known as Caddicarus or Caddy, and today I'll be talking about what Bloodborne means to me. My first impressions with Bloodborne were actually before I even touched the game, or before I knew anything about From Software, the people that also made Dark Souls. I was interested in Bloodborne from the very second, I'm pretty sure it was the E3 trailer, the first E3 trailer, and I've been yearning for a gothic horror, London-esque kind of, I didn't know if it was a horror game exactly, but a monster slaying game, gory, lots of monsters, not necessarily zombies, but just grimy, gritty, dirty Victorian London street kind of thing, because that's the main reason that Nightmare Creatures has stuck with me for so long on the PS1, not because it's the best game ever made, but because the aesthetic, the music, everything about that, the gritty, grimy look of everything, I find it very fascinating, and I find gothic architecture and stuff like that just fascinating in general, because it's needlessly artistic and needlessly overbearing and quite aggressive. And it makes me think, what were they thinking when they made these buildings? And it's games like this and stories like this make me think, that's why you made them like this. It's to keep things away from you. It's to scare off things. I find just the aesthetic of Victorian London I find fascinating. It's almost like there's a paranoid subtext behind the way that the whole visual design of all these places were built in history and in the game. And as we see in Bloodborne, it's definitely done for a logical reason. I mean, if you look around the game, you even see coffins that have been not only nailed shut, but chained up, just so that they can make sure that nothing gets out. And there's loads of details like that I absolutely love. So yeah, I played it the day that it came out. I got myself a copy because the trailer alone sold me on it. I didn't need to see any gameplay trailers or anything like that, and I didn't need to have played any Dark Souls games before that either. I knew I needed it. I didn't know if it was going to be like Nightmare Creatures. I didn't know if it was going to be like Dark Souls. I just knew that I needed it. Oh, I had played Demon Souls a little bit before then, but it was kind of on and off, so I technically beat it with other people, but I hadn't actually fully got myself enveloped into it. I kind of took turns with other people, so it wasn't the same experience at all. It didn't absorb me, but this was the first time I could get absorbed into a From Software title. It didn't necessarily come to me at a significant time in my life, necessarily. It came out, I think it was March 2015, so I had just started making YouTube my full-time job in April 2014, so I was still within my first year of YouTubing for a living, and I was living in my flat alone for the first time March. I moved in July, so yeah, I was only in my flat, I was in my first house for the first time on my own for only a few months, so it was almost like some kind of grown-up thing I was doing, and it was like, this is there were other games that came up before then, obviously, but this was the one I was massively excited for, and one that I could experience in my own living room with no one else around me, in pitch blackness, in the dark, in the middle of the night, without waking anybody up, having the volume turned up. So every kind of event in my life all culminated and coincidentally lapped over each other to create the ultimate environment for playing Bloodborne. The particular moment where it clicked for me, I would go to say as far it was the Cleric Beast, the first boss of the game, which is technically an optional boss, but that was the moment where I knew I was playing something incredible. I thought I was playing something special, just walking around Yharnam, finding all the hidden passages and the shortcuts, fighting the monsters that can kill you in 2 to 3 hits, and learning the dodging and the parrying system and all the incredible intricate details in the combat mechanics and how fast-paced it is, and how it's kind of like Devil May Cry hack and slash, but way more weightier, and it feels like there's more stakes, and you can die at any second. So it's almost like Devil May Cry survival horror, which, if you think about it, Devil May Cry was supposed to be a Resident Evil game, wasn't it? So I guess it's the Devil May Cry that never was, if you want to look at it like that. The moment where it clicked for me was when you're just walking along like you're doing, you're fighting all the trolls, and then there's this big mound of these murderous crows that can barely fly. I guess it's because their wings are so weighed down by flesh and soaked in blood and just fluids and liquids like being seeped into their feathers from the city streets, or because their bellies are so fat from eating carcasses. I don't know, but they can't fly. All they can do is scream at you and attack you. And they're in groups, in bits and pieces throughout the game, but never in this much quantity. And I remember thinking this was weird, and they're guarding a gate, and the gate doesn't seem to lead to anywhere. It leads to a bridge, but there's a door on the other end. Is that a door that leads to somewhere? It looks a bit blocked off. Maybe it doesn't lead anywhere. Is it a dead end? And then you see this monstrous thing leaps over the gothic, aggressive skyline of Yharnam City with the moon in the background, perfect little backdrop. It just like howls, leaps over, lands dead straight in front of you. It's the size of a goddamn skyscraper. All the proportions are wrong. It's got one giant arm. It's making the most hellish, unholy noises. And then the opera from the it's not an opera, but the classical piece starts playing. The score kicks in, and there's the choir that's in there. The low ends of the choir, like the basses, and then there's the tenors and the altos and the sopranos, and they're all just going at it for this, like, it's almost like you've met Satan just in that first song. And this is the first boss, which you can miss, may I just remind you. And it all just works so great. And then after the choir's done and you've taken in the majesty of what you see, then the strings kick in, like all of the fucking cellos kick in, and then the violas, and like it's all low, it's bassy, it's driving, and then the choir jumps in with the percussion when the cymbals start being smashed, and it's such a great piece of music. And the boss battle isn't necessarily incredible. For a first boss though, and for a wake-up call as to what kind of game you're playing, I think it's one of, if not the best I've ever played, easily. And then everything after that, it just kept getting better and better. You got Father Gascoigne, who to this day has been the boss level that has kicked my ass more times than any other boss level in any video game, because I was completely inexperienced. I mean, nowadays I'm alright, I can get by him in one go, no problem. But back then, he murdered me over and over again. It took me a good 30 to 40 tries, not even kidding. And then after that, I felt like I could do anything. So then it was just memorable boss after memorable boss. Even the ones that are really easy, like the Celestial Emissary, even they are memorable. You remember all these bosses, and they're mechanically sound. They're just, some are much easier than others. I don't think there's any low points. Yeah, even with like the Witches of Hemwick, I like them, you know? It's a unique concept. The boss fight is easy, but then when you're at that point where you feel a little bit like scared, or like, oh, your life's on the line, then a slightly easier boss comes in, you murder it, and then you feel just that little bit better about yourself. You feel like you're getting further. It's a little bit artificial, yeah, but it doesn't matter, because it thematically works in the pace of the game. It thematically works with how you feel as a character, as a person playing the game. Like, you're going through an unknown area, and then there's a ridiculously hard boss. So then here's a hard area, but then with a slightly easier boss to make you think there's a bit of hope at the end of the tunnel, you know? I think there's all these peaks and troughs that really work with each other. I don't think there's anything that sticks out to me. My favorite thing about Bloodborne is everything. I don't actually have, like, I can talk about the flaws. Everything has flaws. I don't think there's such thing as a perfect game, obviously, but I don't think there's anything in that game I would change necessarily. I love it as it is. If there's one moment that I can pinpoint that I will never forget, and what I think is probably the best moment, which unfortunately I can't say without spoiling, and if you don't know what I'm about to say, it will ruin it your first time around. So if you haven't played Bloodborne, stop listening for the next couple of seconds, minutes, however long I ramble on for. But there's this one bit, I think you're in the Cathedral Ward, which is like a central hub area which branches off to multiple different cemeteries and different crypts all around itself. And after you beat the Blood-Starved Beast, I believe, it's one of the early bosses, but after you do that, you go back to this central hub area, you're looking for the next place to go, and then you start noticing these new enemies, and they're like these sack-carrying things, and they're quite freaky on their own, but they're incredibly strong. And I took one on for the first time, thinking, oh well, you're a new enemy, but you can't be that hard because this is still an early area of the game. And I was wrong, and the thing knocked me out and killed me. But instead of being respawned at the lantern like I was expecting to, I was instead taken to a cutscene where you see nothing but like the inside of a rag, like a bloody, sacking, baggy thing. And you hear dragging, and I think someone's talking, and it's really unsettling, and you're like, why have I not gone to the lantern? What's going on? What is this cutscene? What, have I triggered something? Was this a story thing? Is this supposed to happen? And then you load up in the middle of a jail cell in somewhere that you've never been to before. You have no idea where you are. There's no map in the game, so you have no idea where you are. You can't pinpoint your location. You've been captured and thrown into this prison cell. And yeah, you can just leave, so they're not very good guards, but you still got here in the first place. You still got knocked out and taken here, so you don't know what's hiding in the corners of this prison. You don't know who took you here. You've seen this new enemy that locked you up into a sack and threw you in here. So what else? What other eldritch horrors are hiding in here? What are they going to do to you? What are they going to look like? Are they going to jump out at you? Are they too strong for you? What happens if you die again? Are you going to go back to the main game? Are you still in the main game? So many questions were flooding my head, and I was shaking. I remember shaking. Remembering as well, playing on my own, dead of the night, volume turned right up. I didn't know what to think of what was going on. And I remember how to get back to, like, the main cathedral ward. I had to find another lantern somewhere, and there's this one lantern that I found, but it was guarded by... It was either some hunters or some more bag-carrying guys, and I was like, no, screw this, and I ran as fast as I could to the lantern and hoped that it would allow me to transport myself back to the hunter's dream or back to the main game, and luckily it did. And then it turns out later on in the game, you just get to go there normally. It's the Yahar'gul, the unseen village, but you just, like, went to the jail portion of it in the early game before they were actually ready for you to be there. So you can keep exploring further. It will lock you out eventually, but it's stuff like that you don't forget. Like, that's when you know you're playing a good goddamn game, you know? The last time I played Bloodborne was actually when me and my youngest stepdaughter were going through all of the Dark Souls games and eventually onto Bloodborne. So unfortunately, because work is very, very time consuming and I've got streams and everything going on, it may have been 2016, 2017 the last time I played it. It's been a good few years since I last played Bloodborne, but I feel like every time I pick it up every so often to get footage or something, it's like fitting into an old pair of slippers, you know, and a good old pair of shoes, trustworthy gloves, you know. Everything works, everything fits together nicely. How many times I've replayed it, I would say, not as many as other people, believe it or not. I would say maybe 4 or 5 times. It's not as many as people would expect, purely because it takes quite a lot out of me. It's a beefy game, and yeah, you can rush through it, but I don't want to rush through it. I want to enjoy it as much as I did the last time every time I do it, even with the DLC, which is some of the best DLC of all time, by the way. And how would I sell Bloodborne to a new player? Well, if you like gore, if you like ridiculously grotesque abominations of monster designs, if you like subtle and very unsettling backstories and lore and plots that you have to look out for yourself, if you like being left in the dark and being confused not only with the context of you being there, but the other things around you and why you're even fighting to survive and you needing to figure that out yourself. If you like amazing visuals, it's one of the best looking games ever made. If you like incredible music, it has one of the best scores of all time. If you like satisfying, parry-based, dodging, rolling, counter-attacking, trading hits and then losing health, but then being able to take your health back by being aggressive just before your health completely goes away, like you have a few seconds after your health gets knocked down to get it back from the enemy that took it from you by hitting them back, so it's all about being aggressive. If you like that kind of thing, and not the slower, more methodical pace of Dark Souls, then you're going to love Bloodborne. If you like Dark Souls, I think you'll also love Bloodborne, but you just need to go in it with a completely different mindset. And nowadays, I play Dark Souls games like I play Bloodborne games. I don't ever use my shield unless I have to, like with bows and arrows and stuff, or like riposting. I don't use the shields aside from those few things, and I like to keep myself light and dodge roll everywhere with my invincibility frames, because it's just that much more fun to play Dark Souls and Bloodborne games like that. And you can take my word for it, because I played Bloodborne without any Souls experience prior, because Dark Souls and the medieval thing at the time didn't interest me before I figured out that it was a lot more than that, but you know what I mean. And that is what Bloodborne means to me.